Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. It's unfortunate that that no one else is speaking on the bill from the other side. I note there's been some great contributions from this side of the House, and I'd like to on the bill, and I noted that the member for Scullin tried to make a silk purse out of a sow's ear in his speech, but really this bill is all about transparency. It's all about accountability. Mr Deputy Speaker, I remember, and we all remember, that cold winter campaign. I remember being on the pre-poll for 3 weeks. I remember being on the pre-poll. It was cold in Queensland. It was as cold as a mother-in-law's kiss in Queensland for 3 weeks. For 3 weeks, those dedicated souls, including my volunteers, stood on the pre-poll for 3 long weeks. Yeah, I mean, the temperature must have, I think it got below 20 degrees on one day. And I had this little old lady come up to me. 20 degrees. I had this little old lady come up to me one day, and she was almost frostbitten. And she said, "Andrew, are you going to take Medicare away? Because I had a phone call that you guys are going to take Medicare away." Now, I didn't know this lady, but I reassured her that what was being peddled by the Labor Party were lies. They were, in fact, lies. And I assured her that we would not be selling Medicare or privatising Medicare, and that we were staunch defenders of Medicare. And she said, "That's fine, that's all I need to know, I'm going to vote for you." Now, there have been many, many stories that came out of the 2016 general election of the lies and the fabrications that were perpetrated by the Labor Party, and they, unfortunately, wear it as a badge of honour. That's right. It is a great sadness, Mr Deputy Speaker, that those opposite would think that it is smart, that it is clever, that it is almost funny to perpetrate a myth that the government was ever intending to privatise or to scrap Medicare, because fundamentally it was wrong. They knew it, and it was nothing other than a cheap political stunt. And a cheap political stunt that very sadly almost worked. And we have to ensure in this place that those sort of games perpetrated by the Labor Party and by GetUp never have an opportunity to succeed again. So this bill is all about ensuring democracy, because that's what I thought we were here for. I know I've only been here for 14 months, but I thought that this place is all about democracy, not trying to pull the wool over some of our most disadvantaged people. I mean, those robocalls that were made to, particularly to the elderly, at night, trying to tell them that they were going to lose Medicare. That is absolutely unforgivable. And those opposite that were involved in that decision-making should hang their heads in shame. It is an absolute disgrace. So we are undertaking and taking steps to ensure that it doesn't happen again. Now, the Electoral Act, like many pieces of legislation, with time does not keep pace with modern-day technology. As time goes on, we're living in a world where technology is continuously growing and getting faster and faster. The sort of technology that the member for Scullin is on right now wasn't even thought conceivable 10 years ago. But now they are used as tools for good, sometimes bad. And in the 2016 election, they were used for, in part, bad. And these reforms that are encapsulated in this bill will ensure that integrity and accountability and transparency of who it is that is actually making these representations, who it is that is actually behind the messaging, will be made clear to the receiver, whether it's by email, whether it's by mobile phone, whether it's by who knows what the technology will be tomorrow. But fundamentally, it is a tenet of our democracy that if someone, particularly at an election time, if someone makes a political statement, the rest of the country ought to know who it is that has made that statement. When you look at any political advertising, whether it be a billboard, whether it be an ad on television, whether it be radio, and you've always got that written, spoken and authorised by Joe Bloggs on behalf of the LMP, for instance. But what we saw in the 2016 election was modern-day technology used by the Labor Party for no other reason than to hoodwink and fool and misrepresent parts of our community, our most vulnerable community, into thinking that Medicare was being privatised. And this bill will put a stop to it. Mr Deputy Speaker, there is nothing more important, as I said, that the identification of a representation be made clear. Now, it's very interesting that those opposite continue to gag both myself and my colleagues when we speak about this bill, because they are embarrassed. They are highly embarrassed, and so they should be. Now, I know that I know that some in the House weren't part of the leadership team that made this decision to obfuscate and misrepresent our position in relation to Medicare. And I'm hoping that those opposite, as they grow through the ranks in the Labor Party, that they would staunchly defend the next time something like this comes up in a future campaign, that they would do the right thing. Both lawyers on the other side of the room, that they would do the right thing and not try and misrepresent the facts. Because as a colleague, I'm sure that they wouldn't do that in their own professional lives. Because as in our democracy, we want to always ensure that we're open, we're accountable and we're transparent. And when those decisions were made by the Labor Party in the 2016 election, they sought to cover up. They sought to manufacture this whole story. And it's all coming down to the importance of authorising this distributed material, whether it be in print material, whether it be in electronic format. And this bill will also have similar provisions in relation to whether it doesn't matter whether it's a referendum or whether it is an election, a general election. The same things will apply. And that's equally important, Mr Deputy Speaker. It will harmonise authorisation requirements across broadcasting electoral and referendum legislation. It will retain current requirements in relation to specified printed materials. And there are certain exemptions. There are certain exemptions such as clothing. So you won't have to have an authorisation on clothing. That's common sense. If you're reporting news or the presentation of current affairs or editorial content in news media, that will also be exempted. Communication solely for genuine satirical, academic or artistic purposes. If those on the other side have got anything to do with it, they won't have anything to do with academic purposes, I'm sure, or solely for the purpose of announcing a meeting, exempted. Opinion polling and research related to voting intentions, exempted. Communication for personal purposes, exempted. Communication intended to remain within a disclosure entity is exempted. Real-time communications where the Speaker and any disclosure entity on whose behalf the Speaker is communicating are or could reasonably be identified are also exempted. Because clearly, if someone is standing on a street corner and making some representations in a town hall or a street corner, whatever it might be, clearly we know who that person is, or we can make certain investigations to find out who they are. Now, interestingly, Schedule 2 has been decided to be removed from this bill, but make no mistake, we will be back. We will be back, and we will reintroduce. I'll be back. We will be back to reintroduce Schedule 2, and I think it's just important. Although strictly speaking, I understand it's not part of this bill, but Schedule 2 will make it a criminal offence for people who misrepresent and who actually pretend to be representing a government department or authority. So clearly those people on the other side from Get Up and the ALP misrepresented the situation at the 2016 election. We will be back. We will introduce criminal provisions that will see those people, should they do it again, end up in court and suffer the sanctions of criminal penalties.
I thank the